Hello and welcome to the RationalFanz podcast. That is RationalFanz with a Z. I'm joined here by Evan Kruger.
What's happening?
Rhett Koblenz.
Yo.
And Nate Haynes.
Hi.
This morning, we're going to start off with a little bit of MLB action. World Series started yesterday, as we all know. 14-inning marathon. Got over at 1 o'clock in the morning. 1:30 maybe. That was absolutely amazing. I didn't stay up for it all. Good, thank goodness. But 14 innings, what are your thoughts on yesterday's World Series game there?
Well, I thought there'd be a lot of offensive firepower coming into this World Series, but, a 5-4 ball game, that's pretty low scoring for those two teams and the bats that they've had. Going into the ninth inning, the Mets had a 4-3 lead, and they gave up that solo shot in the bottom of the ninth to Alex Gordon to send it to extras. And, that's Alex Gordon, the guy who's been around Kansas City for such a long time, even before they were good. And, he's their main player on that team. He's the key cornerstone, and he came through for him in the clutch yesterday, and he delivered and got him into extra innings where they could finally win it 14 innings after that.
I was listening to the ESPN radio, and I forget which Royals player it was, but he was stating how the Royals, they swing at the very first pitch of every ball game. For some reason, it boosts their winning percentage. So then Matt Harvey decides to throw a pitch right over the middle of the plate. You know he's going to swing. Why not throw him something right inside or way away?
Right, yeah. Well, that was Matt Harvey's first mistake of the game. Other than that, he pitched a really good outing, and he just gave up that one big hit right off the bat, and that wasn't all his fault. Yoenis Cespedes made a bad play in the outfield, and it got away from him, and so that was part of it. But Harvey, if he's hanging pitches like that, the rest of the World Series is not going to be pretty for the Mets.
World Series usually comes down to two of the hottest pitching arms. I'm not sure if you could call it two of the hottest pitching arms in this World Series, but you have two of the hottest pitching staffs. You have the Mets with their absolutely loaded starting squad, and then you have the Royals who have a really, really loaded bullpen, and that bullpen is what saved the Royals yesterday, giving up no runs in the 8th and 9th or throughout up to the 14th as the Mets had that one-run lead, and then they came back to win it.
Yeah, that was really the key thing was their bullpen. Volquez, who started the game, gave up 3 runs. Herrera gave up the other one, and other than that, their relief pitchers pitched extremely well. They gave up the relievers without Herrera gave up 2 hits. So between 5 pitchers, they gave up 2 hits, and that's what really got them the win was their strong performance in the bullpen, and that's what allowed them to win that game last night, and that's what's going to allow them to get through this World Series, and hopefully they can avenge last year's loss to the Giants.
Tonight's matchup is Jacob deGrom versus Johnny Cueto. That should be a definitely a great pitching matchup there in Kansas City tonight.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see deGrom pitch in the World Series. Young guy who's going to have a lot of years ahead of him, a lot of successful years ahead of him, and Cueto, who's a veteran, and he was kind of shaky this year after being traded at the deadline. Everybody thought that was the biggest deal of the trade deadline, and that ultimately didn't really help either team by getting the Reds were still bad even without him, and the Royals, well, he kind of struggled and had that bad stretch there, but he's a veteran pitcher and he's experienced, and it's just going to be good to see him, who he likes to mix things up and throws a lot of pitches that'll mess with you, versus deGrom, who's an overpowering pitcher. It's just going to be an interesting matchup to see tonight.
It might be a little too late, one game in, to give your World Series predictions, but last week we weren't even through the divisional series games, so let's go around, give our World Series predictions, starting with Evan. Who's going to win?
All right. So, as you know, I said that the Cardinals would win the World Series, but I was implying that the Royals would win the World Series.
You got a team from Missouri, so...
Yeah. So by the transitive property of baseball, I picked the Royals to win the World Series. So I'm the genius here. I'm the baseball expert. All right.
I'm the one who had the Royals in the World Series to begin with, so you can pipe down over there, Evan.
Well, I made the very, very strategic prediction of the New York Mets in the World Series. So, even though they lost Game 1, I'm going to stick with them. I think they're going to win it. Let's go, New York.
Rhett, what is your World Series prediction?
Both teams looked pretty good last night, and it was actually a shock to see Gordon get that home run in the bottom of the ninth. That was Familia's first blown save since July, so that was something that you don't see very often from that Mets pitcher. But I honestly think that the Mets can recover from this Game 1 loss, and I think that they're going to take it in 7.
I think that I agree with you on the Mets. I think that starting rotation will be too much for the Royals to handle. They jump out to some early leads. The bullpen can only do so much to keep the Royals in it. We're going to turn to some NBA action now. We have no idea where Tim, our NBA expert, is. He was supposed to be here this morning, but he's not. So we're going to go without him. Good thing, because I knew, watching the Bulls last night, I knew when we got in here first thing this morning, we would never hear the end of the Bulls beating the Cavaliers.
All right, so you look we talked about the Bulls this offseason, that they were going to have this high-powered offense, and they were going to have a really fast-paced offense under Frank Hoiberg. But last night you saw them win like they would have under Tom Thibodeau, and that was defense getting the job done. I mean, they didn't exactly light it up. I mean, Derrick Rose, who missed the entire preseason, he went 8 for 22. That's not really what you want out of your point guard. But even still, they got the win. And, I mean, a win's a win. It's a long season, so honestly, this game means absolutely nothing, considering that there's 81 other games that they have to play. But still, I mean, it's opening night. You're excited, and I think that's a great confidence-boosting win for the Bulls, who opinion is really split about the Bulls here. I mean, some people think that they're going to have a great season. Others think that the Cavaliers are just the complete favorite to win the East, but I don't know if this game's going to really change any opinions. It was only a 2-point game, but it was a defensive win for the Bulls. And so if they're going to live up to the hype of being a fast-paced offensive team, then they're going to really have to change their playing style.
The Cavaliers did play without Kyrie Irving, but then Joakim Noah left the game there as well. The Bulls almost blew the fourth quarter lead. I believe they had like an 86-93 or 95, something like that. But they had that lead with like 2.5 minutes, and they only score like 2 or 4 more points and let the Cavs score like 9 more. So that wasn't very good there for the Cavaliers. I mean the Bulls, excuse me.
Yeah, the every year it almost seems like the Chicago Bulls are a ticking time bomb, It's only a matter of time before Derrick Rose gets hurt again and, all the players get disgruntled and, they end up imploding on themselves, They looked all right last night, not like great or anything. Plus, LeBron had that really awful back injury that he was playing through. So kudos to LeBron for playing through that. So, we'll see what the Bulls have in store for us. They might surprise us this year. I don't know. We'll see.
And the other key game of the night was the Golden State Warriors and the New Orleans Pelicans. 111-95. Many experts, including myself, believed that the Warriors, they would still be up there in the West, but they wouldn't be the number 1 seed because you have the Rockets, the Spurs, the Thunder. You have just so much competition there in the West. And then the Warriors come out, put up 111 points, and just blow out the Pelicans. Nobody could have expected a blowout with Steph Curry scoring 40 points. I think the Warriors could be up there again this year.
I expected a blowout. The Pelicans, they made the playoffs last year, only to get torched by Steph Curry in that first round. I think that the Pelicans are a playoff team, but I do not think that they're one of the contenders in the West. I do think that they'll get in just because the rest of the West is worse than they are, and I think that'll put them in the playoffs. But the Hawks last night, they also played the Pistons, and they got beat, which isn't good when you get beat by the Pistons. But the Hawks just looked like they they looked like they lost what they found a couple years ago, and they kind of looked like they don't really have a sense of what they're doing. And I thought that they would be one of the better teams in the East this year, and they still could come around, but they definitely have some work to do just by looking at that first night of play.
Well, I mean, we're not really going to know how the season's going to unfold until you get about 15 games in. Then you can really get an accurate you know accurately where teams are vis-a-vis their playing style, how talented they are. Are they going to be a contender or pretender? Because at this point, it's game one. And so 1-0 or 0-1, it doesn't make much difference in the end. But once we get about 15 games in, it makes a heck of a lot of difference if you're 13-2 or 4-11. And so I don't know. We kind of got to wait till then to say how the season's going to unfold, because I don't think the Pelicans are going to be that good. Everybody thinks that Anthony Davis is going to be an MVP candidate on a better team. They don't give the MVP to people on terrible teams. And so if I were Anthony Davis, I would complain until I get on a better team. But that's just me.
As you all know, I always write my NBA season preview before, a week before the season starts. Something you can look for this year is having the Knicks, Lakers, and Timberwolves all in the playoffs this season. That would be pretty monumental for all three of those teams to be in there.
Yeah, the Timberwolves, I think they're going to surprise some people this year. The Knicks, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if Melo can rally the troops. I don't know about that because, he's kind of lazy. And it's New York sports, so I'm sorry, all you Knicks fans, which is basically me and no one else. Well, I'm kind of a Knicks fan. But anyway, the Lakers, Kobe Bryant's probably not going to stay healthy this year. And even if he does, he's probably just going to ball hog it the whole year and, shoot it 60 times a game. So
Yeah, but now Kobe Bryant, he's getting up there in age, and he's on the decline, as we've seen. And now the Lakers have D'Angelo Russell, the passer from Ohio State, who can drop dimes on the basketball court. And so Kobe, I don't think Kobe will do this, but he can do. He can use this season almost to help D'Angelo Russell become the kind of point guard that that the NBA, that teams in the NBA need. And for D'Angelo Russell being on the same team as Kobe Bryant, you're going to be able to learn a lot, but you're going to have to learn it yourself because Kobe's probably not going to actually take time and teach you.
Well, yeah, Kobe's not the kind of player, and he doesn't have the kind of personality where he's really willing to go and help out other players, because really, he in his career, and he's earned the right to do this, but he's really been all about Kobe, honestly. And he has the reputation of being a ball hog, and he's earned it. So as long as Kobe Bryant is still on the Lakers, I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, honestly. But I was talking to Tim yesterday, and he was asking me, who's going to stop LaMarcus Aldridge? Who's going to stop the Spurs backcourt, or front court rather, in the West? Roy Hibbert. What if the Lakers and Spurs, the Lakers somehow limp to an 8 seed, and the Spurs are going to be number 1, obviously. And then I think Roy Hibbert's just going to shut them down, have a great series because he's the best center ever. Ask any Pacers fan. We're here in Indiana. Everybody here loves Roy Hibbert, who's a big fan favorite. So, yeah, sure.
Tonight on the NBA slate, we have a couple marquee matchups. We have the Spurs Thunder. That could be a big one in the West. We have the Pacers Raptors. I know Evan's a Raptors fan there.
Big time Raptors fan.
And then the Timberwolves and Lakers. That one isn't as good as the other ones, but it still could be great because you have two very, very good rookies competing against each other, and Karl Anthony Towns and the Ohio State point guard whose name escapes me.
D'Angelo Russell.
There you go. Red only said it 4 times.
I said it once, but okay.
4 times.
Yeah.
All right, let's go around and make NBA finals predictions. I'm going to start with Rhett. Make a finals prediction. Who wins, who they beat, and how many games?
Cavs 4-3 over the Spurs.
Evan.
San Antonio Spurs 4-2 over the Cavaliers.
Nate.
Cavaliers, Warriors, Cavs will win.
Going with a little rematch from last year, huh?
Yes.
Revenge.
I'm going Cavs Thunder. Cavaliers win in 7.
Well, I mean, with the Cavs, you got to ask, what if Kyrie Irving had been at full strength? What if Kevin Love had been there? I mean, that could have been. They could have easily won that series because, mind you, the Cavaliers were up 2-1. They had a game at home that could have swung it 3-1, which probably would have gotten them the series. So, a Kevin Love could have changed that series completely.
Well, you know what it really came down to was the fact that the Cavs didn't have enough players to score points. And, you know, if you have Love and Kyrie on the floor, that's an extra, 30 to 40 points a game. I'm thinking closer to 40, and then that way, if you get 30 from LeBron and then 40 from those two guys, and then you've got guys like Matthew Dellavedova, J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert, like last year, who pitch in, like 10 points a game-ish, that's 90 right there. And so I think what the Cavs were really missing were those two offensive players, and that's what is going to get them into the championship this year if those guys stay healthy.
Yeah, LeBron, he put on a show last year, He was scoring over 40 points a game, and they still got, seemingly blown out every single game because LeBron had no players around him, And it was amazing. I still think they should have given the Finals MVP to him, but, the media says, give it to Steph Curry. Why? 'Cause he's on the winning team. Okay.
Steph Curry didn't even win the Finals MVP.
Or no, it wasn't Steph Curry. It was
Draymond Green.
Draymond Green, yeah, but no.
Andre Iguodala.
Oh yeah, it was.
See, this is why I'm an
I don't watch basketball.
NFL expert.
No.
I don't know
College football.
Yes, and college football. But anyway, they should have given it to LeBron. But yeah, that's my opinion on that.
The reason that the Cavaliers brought in all the talent that they did for all the money that they spent was so we wouldn't see exactly what we saw last year in the finals, which is one superstar looking around, begging people for help. He looked like a deer caught in the headlights. He was doing everything he can, laying his body on the line, and the rest of his teammates couldn't do squat. I mean, Matthew Dellavedova, after the first 3 games, he just kind of fell off the face of the planet. I mean, he was great defensively on Steph Curry, but then, he just decides he's not going to play defense anymore, and the Cavaliers get squashed.
All right, we're going to turn to college football. I'm going to turn to Nate first. What are some first impressions from this week's college football games?
Yeah, I was watching some Baylor and Iowa State this weekend. At first, Baylor, it looked like they had the blowout set in stone. They were up, 21 or 28 nothing. But then Iowa State, they started to give Baylor some problems, and Baylor still won 45-27, but that was a pretty close ball game, in the third and even a little bit in the fourth quarter. Some bad news for Baylor though. Seth Russell, their quarterback, is out for the season now with a neck injury, and I really think that's going to hurt them in their college football playoff chances this year.
We all thought Baylor wasn't even going to be that great without Bryce Petty this season, and then Seth Russell comes in, and they're dropping 60 points a game. This was their closest match to the season, and that was because they lost Seth Russell. So you have to wonder, with their backup quarterback, does Baylor continue on this 60-point tear that they've been on the whole season?
Well, it's not like Art Briles picks any random quarterback from the state of Texas to come play for his team. No, he picks a guy who fits perfectly into his system, and that's the great thing about Art Briles is he knows exactly who to pick. As we've seen with Bryce Petty and Seth Russell, both of those guys are very similar with their talent set, and they have been able to put up a lot of points for that Baylor offense. And this freshman quarterback is no exception to that system.
We can't forget that Baylor also had RG3. So I don't think I'm wrong here, but it went RG3, Bryce Petty, Seth Russell. Those are 3 really good quarterbacks right in a row there for the Baylor offense. 3
really good college quarterbacks.
Yeah, Yeah, three really good college quarterbacks. Another game that I was watching was the Michigan State-Indiana game. Boy, that game was really close. The score doesn't show it. Michigan State won 52-26. But, into the fourth quarter, I thought IU was going to win. And Michigan State, for the second week in a row, they kind of got lucky because the other team started screwing up and fooling around with the ball, and IU ended up losing. But man, Michigan State, you are teetering right now.
That was definitely the score. Definitely, like you said, didn't quite show how close that game was because they pulled away towards the end of that one, basically in garbage time. But I was more impressed with Connor Cook's performance. 398 yards and 4 touchdown passes. He's a very good quarterback. And I think that he has a solid skill set and the ability as well to perform at the next level. So I'm looking at him as one of the best quarterbacks of the next draft class.
Well, I mean, any game with Indiana, it shouldn't come as a surprise when the opposing quarterback has great numbers because Indiana's defense is terrible. They had to dismiss a few players at the beginning of the season, and so that didn't help them. They weren't going to be good anyways. But anyhow, let's talk about Ohio State Rutgers. Ohio State finally came out and looked impressive against one of these teams that they were supposed to beat by a bunch, and they did. I think that starting J.T. Barrett was a great move by Urban Meyer. I think that he showed that he deserved the starting job. Cardale Jones, still a good quarterback, but he just wasn't performing like Ohio State needed him to in order to be a championship team. He just didn't look like a championship quarterback. So Ohio State, I think that when as future polls come out for the college football playoffs, I think that voters, if they keep winning like this, are going to be a lot more comfortable with keeping them at number 1 if they keep winning like this.
You have to wonder if the transition from Cardale Jones to J.T. Barrett does anything for Ohio State and lets them win by more points.
There's a reason that they voted on JT as a team captain, even though they didn't know who was going to be the starting quarterback, and that's because they respect JT's leadership. I'm not saying that they disrespect Cardale Jones. I'm just saying that, I'm saying that JT is a better leader than Cardale Jones is, and I think that the team realizes that, and they're more prone to rally around a good leader. But also with JT Barrett being in, that gives them another runner that teams have to account for. Zeke Elliott got another 100-yard game. He ran 19 times for 142 yards and two scores. Then J.T. Barrett follows that up with 13 rushes for 101 yards and 2 scores. And that's just another option that defenses have to account for. And it becomes overwhelming at times when you have to deal with, a Heisman candidate running back and a quarterback who, if he plays a whole season, he's also a potential Heisman candidate.
Yeah, I can't remember. I might have been watching ESPN or I read it online, but a point was made where if you have a quarterback with running ability, you'll have 10 blockers out there for him instead of 9 if you hand it off to the running back. And, that really helps the offense out. That extra block might end up giving you the touchdown.
Wasn't that Chris Collinsworth on Sunday Night Football? I think we were talking about that once yesterday. Yep.
But he's kind of right on that. It's a good point. So, yeah, for some reason, Chris Collinsworth actually said something knowledgeable somehow. Wow. Okay. Anyway. Another game. Shake-up. Yeah, shake-up in the top 3, I guess. Utah ended up getting smothered by USC. USC is one of those, kind of unpredictable teams this year. Fire your head coach. Oh, hey, let's go beat number 3 Utah now. Utah, they kind of just fell flat on their face. It was kind of sad. And that probably kills their college football playoff chances now.
ACC was basically a circus this week. You had Pitt beating Florida State on the blocked field goal.
Georgia Tech,
excuse me. Then you had Clemson destroying Miami, Al Golden getting fired.
Pitt squeaked one out over Syracuse.
And then you had the 4 overtime game between Duke and Virginia Tech. So many good games to watch there. Well, besides the Clemson one. So many good games to watch. It was just a circus this week in the ACC.
Yeah, I want to talk about LSU because it was obvious that Western Kentucky kind of sold out to stop Leonard Fournette. And Leonard Fournette had a down game. He only had 150 yards and a touchdown, which surprisingly isn't that great for Leonard Fournette. But I was impressed particularly by LSU quarterback Brandon Harris. I mean, he threw for a career-high 286 yards. 2 of his 3 touchdowns were more than 50 yards. So he showed that if somehow some team is able to shut down Leonard Fournette, LSU will still have a chance to win because he can still lead his team to a victory. They pulled away in the second half, and so LSU at first it was kind of close with Western Kentucky, and I thought, oh, are they gonna slip in the rankings a little bit? But they pulled away and won by 28. So the score kind of reflects just how dominant LSU has been recently.
It's kind of sad when we're saying 150 yards and a touchdown isn't a good game. Any other running back in the NFL or NCAA would probably be happy with 150 yards and a touchdown.
With maybe the exception of Zeke Elliott.
But other than that, everybody would be happy with those numbers.
Yeah, LSU too. One of the most underrated, in my opinion, one of the most underrated players in college football right now is their number 1 wide receiver, Malachi Dupree. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, and Leonard Fournette has stole the show, and it's kind of, or Malachi Dupree has kind of been in Leonard Fournette's shadow this whole time. But Brandon Harris, he loves passing to Dupree when he gets the chance, and if they can get the ball to Dupree more, if they want to, with how good Fournette's been running, but if they end up doing that, wow, watch out! This is gonna be a really good offense. So LSU is a bye this weekend, but next week's matchup against Alabama will be one that we'll have to watch.
Speaking of what is coming, we're going to turn to upcoming games this following week. Evan, what is a key game for you this upcoming week?
All right, well, let's check out the coming college football landscape. All right, so Notre Dame Temple is kind of a game that people should watch. Remember at the beginning of the season when Penn State lost to Temple, people were saying, oh no, Penn State's terrible. But then they've come out and played pretty well since then. And Temple has shown, I mean, they're ranked 21st, am I right? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yep. They're ranked 21st, and they've had a really great season. They're 7-0.
Yeah, I was just going to say they're undefeated.
And so they're taking on Notre Dame in primetime, and I think that's going to be a great matchup because Notre Dame, after losing Malik Zaire, they've kind of come out and they've flown under the radar. People haven't really talked about them a whole lot, but they've done well enough to stay in the top 10, and so that's going to be a great matchup to watch.
Rhett, what is a key game for you this week?
I'm gonna look. Well, actually, I don't see any key games this week. I'm gonna turn to the Pac-12, and USC Cal. It's not a ranked matchup. It's two teams that have kind of struggled this season, but currently at this point, the Pac-12 is kind of a toss-up, and Cal, they're at 4-3, and they're sitting in third in the Pac-12 North, 2-2 in the conference. They need to keep winning games if they want to catch Stanford. So this matchup in the Pac-12, while it may not seem important on the surface, is a little bit more important once you start looking at standings in the Pac-12.
Nate, what is a key game for you this week?
Yeah, a key game for me this week would have to be West Virginia and TCU, surprisingly. West Virginia, they're 3-3 this season, kind of up and down, but their offense can put up some points. And, TCU, well, they give up points. And, they do score a lot too, but, that's probably going to be another one of those 70-63 games, I still think TCU will probably come out on top, but that's a game to watch.
The over-under on that game is only 75. So that'd be like a 45-40 matchup there. Like you said, I could see both teams scoring upwards of 50 and 60. So that'd be a pretty smart play on the over there.
I'm still in the Pac-12, but an even more important matchup is Stanford and Washington State. When you say Washington State, you typically don't think important matchup this late in the season, But Washington State is second in the Pac-12 North behind Stanford. And Stanford, who is ranked 8th, I believe, they're leading by 2 games in the Pac-12 North, and Washington State could make up a lot of ground with a victory here. They could get to 4-1 in the conference, and Stanford could drop to 5-1, and then that would be that much of a tighter matchup. If Washington State can somehow pull it out, then they're one step closer to winning that Pac-12 North.
And for my game of the week, I am going to stay on a Thursday night game, North Carolina and Pitt. North Carolina 6-1, only losing to South Carolina this year. They've dominated the ACC, undefeated, but now they have to go up against a ranked team in Pittsburgh. So that'll be a tough matchup for North Carolina. And if they could beat Pitt, it's almost a guarantee they're going to be ranked.
Right. Well, one of the teams coming away from that is no longer going to be undefeated in the ACC, and that's going to be the key matchup so far. Pitt, Duke, and North Carolina are all still undefeated in the ACC, and this is the key matchup for the ACC this week. We saw a lot of craziness happen, like you said, Mason, last week in the ACC. Who knows if we'll see more?
Like you said, Pitt, Duke, and North Carolina are all undefeated in the ACC, but that's in the Coastal Division alone. You still have Clemson and the Atlantic undefeated at 4-0 in the conference as well. We're going to turn to some NFL action now. Nate, what are some of your first thoughts from the NFL this weekend?
Well, the first game I want to talk about is the Raiders and Chargers matchup. The Raiders surprisingly won 37-29. And wow, San Diego Chargers, what is going on right now? You are 2-5. Coming into the season, I thought you might have a chance to be a Super Bowl contender, but Phillip Rivers has been doing pretty well. Although against Oakland in the first and second quarter, he did struggle. He did end up passing for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he also threw 2 interceptions. The Raiders, wow, they're gaining some momentum right now. They're 3-3, but I still think they can beat the Broncos, and they may have a shot to win that division. I don't know. It depends on if Peyton Manning will hold up the rest of the season or not.
Might want to break out the archives on this one and go back and listen to Nate say the Chargers are a playoff team there.
Wasn't it Eagles over Chargers that you said?
My prediction, I believe it was Patriots over Eagles in the Super Bowl. That was not very intelligent on my part.
All right, so the game I want to talk about is that Thursday night game. It's been absolutely astounding and confounding to see the regression of Colin Kaepernick, to go from where he was playing in the Super Bowl to where he is now, leading one of the most impotent offenses in the NFL. And they could only muster 3 points, and you could probably count their total yards on one hand. I mean, it was just an embarrassing outing for the 49ers, and a lot of reports that I've heard is that they're doing to Colin Kaepernick really what they did to Jim Harbaugh. They're making him the scapegoat. The ownership and the management are really kind of alienating him. So I think we're seeing the last days of Kaepernick in San Francisco. I mean, he's talented. You can't deny that. He has great legs, but I mean, it's just he doesn't seem to have the intangibles that could make him a great enough leader to pull the 49ers out of the slump that they've been in for a year and a half now.
The thing about Harbaugh was that he took a mediocre at best quarterback and made him look good just because Harbaugh knows how to motivate a man to do work. And he can get the most out of a player. That's just the way he is. He's intense, he's fierce, and he can get the most out of any player. And I really think that is the difference, is Harbaugh, despite the fact that management didn't like him or whatever, I honestly think he was the reason that Kaepernick played well for those couple of years early in his career.
Yeah, I said that a few weeks ago. I mean, Harbaugh knows how to squeeze wins out of Colin Kaepernick, and that's not something that Colin Kaepernick knows how to do. He doesn't know how to squeeze wins out of Colin Kaepernick. I mean, he's been, up and down, but overall, he's been very, very far below average. And out of your starting quarterback in San Francisco, a team that went to 3 straight NFC championship games, Who could have seen this coming at the start of last season? Everybody thought that the 49ers were going to make it to their 4th NFC Championship game. Where they are now, it's kind of just a disappointment to watch them because they're so bad.
So that brings out the question: if Harbaugh, didn't bring out the best in Kaepernick, and Kaepernick played like an average quarterback, but then they decided to keep Alex Smith instead of Kaepernick, do you still see the 49ers as what's their record now? 2-5 maybe?
Yeah, they're 2-5.
Do you still see the 49ers as a 2-5 team, or do you see them more as a 4-3, maybe a 3-4 team?
Yeah, I think they might have, maybe one, at most 2 more wins. But, Alex Smith, he's been struggling in Kansas City recently. Alex Smith has kind of regressed again almost. He's going back to his dink and dunk ways, especially without Jamal Charles. Just dump it off to the tight end for a 5-yard gain. Then, some shotgun crap and where he gets 4 yards on 3rd and 19. I don't know. The 49ers, they were really hurt by all the departures and retirements this offseason. It was, historically one of, if not the worst off seasons in NFL history. So, we'll have to see where San Francisco goes from here.
I'm gonna turn to Rhett here really quick. And then we're gonna turn to Evan. But, Rhett, what is a thing that you've noticed this week in the NFL?
The Browns are really terrible still, and they will most likely always be terrible, but that's a given. But, I also noticed that the Vikings I think they've arrived, honestly. Having Adrian Peterson, who's a monster running back, any team would be happy to have him. And also Teddy Bridgewater, who I think has finally turned the corner and has figured out how to be a good NFL quarterback. I think the Vikings have arrived. It's going to be tough for them to contend with the Packers in the NFC North, but they should be getting a wild card, and maybe they'll make a splash in the playoffs.
Yeah, as a ginormous Vikings fan, I can tell you, the new team under Mike Zimmer, it just looks so more energetic, Mike Zimmer knows what he's doing, unlike Brad Childress and Leslie Frazier, bad coaches of the past. But, the thing that's really making the Vikings, I guess good right now is their defense. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the Vikings have the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL right now. Or top 5 at least.
Top 5.
Yeah.
I think the number 1 is the Packers. Out of all people,
the
Packers with that explosive offense also have the number 1 scoring.
Yeah, but their defense, it's day and night, from last year. They have, especially 2 years ago when they were the 31st ranked defense in the NFL. It was horrible, but Teddy Bridgewater, he can kind of lean on that defense, and I think we're kind of seeing that more now in the NFL. These offenses start to lean on these defenses, and that's kind of what wins you games.
Well, Teddy Bridgewater now, he doesn't have to make every single play, and if he doesn't make a play and they have to punt because of it, his defense can back him up, so he doesn't have all of the pressure on him now. And he also is getting weapons around him as well. The first guy that comes to mind is Stephon Diggs, that explosive player. He caught 6 passes for 108 yards and a touchdown. He is quickly becoming Bridgewater's favorite target, and that's a good combination for the Vikings to have, in addition to Adrian Peterson.
Well, yeah, with the wide receiver corps in Minnesota, Stephon Diggs is kind of the only guy who's been doing things this year. We're seeing, the same old Mike Wallace we did in Miami, just lazy, brick hands, give me the perfect pass or I'm not going to catch it. Then, he ends up with 30 yards. Yeah, thanks, Mike Wallace. That's why we're paying you $11 million this year. Charles Johnson, he's been a bust. He just lacks physical ability. And, Jarris Wright, he's been hurt this year. But, yeah, it's surprising that, we actually have a wide receiver who does stuff this year.
All right, we're going to turn to Evan. I know this probably isn't Evan's favorite segment, but the Colts suck.
All right, I do this every week. The Colts suck. You guys love hearing me rant about it. And with good reason, because the Colts really do suck. I mean, you look, that first half was probably the most embarrassed I've ever been in my tenure as a Colts fan since I was a small lad. 20-0, and it looked like it could have easily been 40-0. I mean, the Colts this year, they've gotten a few turnovers by accident from the other team almost. I mean, they did that with Tom Brady. They did that. I mean, any turnovers that they get, it seems like they just fall into their lap, and then they go and do absolutely nothing with it. I mean, it was 20-0. They'd given up so many big plays to the Saints. They couldn't stop anything. Mark Ingram ran for 10 yards a carry. I mean, that's just completely... He only carried the ball, 14 times, had 150 yards. I mean, he just completely torched Indianapolis' defense. They have probably the worst... They have the worst defense in terms of total yardage in the NFL. The run defense was, I mean, it was 13th before this week. I mean, who knows where it is now after giving up that many yards. And I mean, on the flip side, the Colts only ran the ball 13 times. It's almost as if they said, all right, Andrew Luck is back. Every good thing that we did while he was gone, we're going to throw that out the window. We're going to run 13 times, make him throw the ball 45 times a game, make it that much more likely for him to throw interceptions, put all of the pressure on him, and if he doesn't score points, we're going to give up points to make the game even more stressful for him. I mean, I heard that after the game there was an altercation between Jim Irsay and Ryan Grigson. God, part of me wishes that Jim Irsay would have hit Ryan Grigson over the head with a beer bottle or something. But I understand Ryan Grigson, he's probably not sabotaging the Colts. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, they spend the third least on offensive linemen in the NFL. Andrew Luck got sacked 4 times against the Saints defense, which is not very good. They had the worst pass defense in the NFL coming into that game.
Yeah, but they have a good defensive line.
Sure, but their secondary is so bad, you think, all right, Andrew Luck, a decent quarterback's going to be able to do something with the ball, but nope, he goes and throws 2 picks in the first half, gets him down in a huge hole, and then they decide they want to start playing offense.
And then they
make it 21-27, and then they can't stop the Saints, and they run out of time, and before you know it, Colts are 3-4, and everybody's talking about firing Chuck Pagano after the bye week in Week 10, which I'm sure there are some Colts fans that would like to see that. But I mean, who in the organization is going to be able to lead the team any better than Chuck Pagano can?
Pep Hamilton. He would probably be the replacement, honestly.
Most likely. And I mean, I don't know what's going on with the Colts. Their management is bad. Their defense is bad. All of their free agents that they signed this year, like Trent Cole, who's yet to get a sack, are really bad. Andrew Luck is playing bad. Their run game is bad. Frank Gore only got to carry the ball 9 times against the Saints. So, I mean, the only bright spot that I can see is T.Y. Hilton, who finally did something, but that was really courtesy of the Saints secondary falling flat on their butts.
Literally.
Yeah, literally, and giving them those 2 huge touchdowns.
Well, but despite all this, they're still first in the division, and God bless the AFC South.
Well, I mean, I honestly think that a 6-10 Colts team could win the AFC South, because as long as the rest of the AFC South keeps losing, the Colts don't have to win.
Those 6 wins would be against the AFC South.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have 3 more games left, and 2 of those games are at home against their division opponents. And so I think it's very likely that they're going to be 3-7 here within the next month, because the next 3 teams that they play in the next 4 weeks, and then there's a bye week after their second game, but they have a combined record of 18-1. The Panthers, the Broncos, the Falcons, they're going to get annihilated because the Panthers and Broncos have amazing defenses, and then the Falcons' offense is going to light up the Colts for 45 points. And so they're not going to be able, there's no possible world ever in which the Colts win any of those games. I think they're going to be 3-7.
I think you and I were talking of this earlier in the week, Evan, where the Colts go 7-9 because they play everyone in their division, but they also play the Buccaneers.
Yep. So 7-9. I think this. I would put money on that happening. Honestly, that they're only going to win that one non-division game, and nothing that they've shown me this year has convinced me otherwise. And so, it's going to be they're going to make the playoffs and lose in the wild card because they're a 7-9 team, and it's going to be an ugly, dark off season for everybody in the Colts organization, even for Jim Irsay. For Ryan Grigson, he's going to lose his job. I bet Chuck Pagano's going to be gone, and so we'll see what happens with Pep Hamilton. I can't even name their defensive coordinator. That's how irrelevant their defense is.
Greg
Manusky. He stinks. He's going to lose his job. Their backup defensive line coach is going to lose his job. It's going to be a bad offseason.
This could be a season where we see 4 coaches from the same division getting fired. You have Bill O'Brien with the Texans, Gus Bradley with the Jaguars, and Ken Wisenhunt with the Titans. Ken Wisenhunt would probably be the first one to go out of all 4 of those coaches. He has a 3-19 record as an NFL coach. That's absolutely horrible.
That's just nasty. Like, how do you still have a job? The AFC South is really, really bad. But, the team that I really want to talk about, too, right now is the Houston Texans. Oh. You know what? That is an absolute...
dumpster fire.
It is a dumpster fire. They just lost Arian Foster for the season again. And, what's going on with Ryan Mallett? They ended up releasing him because he was stuck in traffic, and that caused him to miss the flight to the game. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me.
He's not a very good quarterback either.
Well, he's not good either, but, that just shows, the players don't want to play anymore. Their whole team is J.J. Watt and DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, the perfect example of them not wanting to play anymore was when they played the Colts on that Thursday night game, and they subbed Brian Hoyer in, and Mallett went and pouted on the sideline. I saw I think a picture, and it was Andrew Luck. He's like really into games, even when he's on the sideline. He was like celebrating, and it said, "When your backup scores a touchdown," and then it was Ryan Mallett who was like sitting there holding his collar, like, "What am I doing on the sideline? I'm the best thing in the world." And it was when your backup scores a touchdown. Just that stark contrast between Andrew Luck and Ryan Mallett. Ryan Mallett was really upset to be taken out. I just don't like Ryan Mallett.
Well, granted, Andrew Luck was in no danger of losing his job, but you kind of felt like as soon as C.O. Moore hit Ryan Mallett and he went out of the game for a couple plays, as soon as Brian Hoyer completed one pass, you knew, all right, Ryan Mallett's lost his job for the season. Because no matter how bad Brian Hoyer is, I mean, you're not going to make the Texans magically better by just putting in Ryan Mallett. I mean, anything short of bringing in Greg Popovich to sprinkle some magic beard hairs on the Texans organization, I don't see them winning more than 3 games this year.
Let's talk about one more game before we turn to what's coming up. Eagles and Panthers. I know every week I like to talk about them because they're still undefeated. Panthers playing a very methodical game. Going back to like the 1950s, run the ball, really stout defense. Panthers are number 1 in the NFL in rushing yards per game at like 145. So they're relying on Jonathan Stewart, Mike Tolbert, and Cam Newton there to get the job done.
Yeah, Mason, you're almost as bad as Tim and his Bulls, hearing it every single day. But anyway, I think, with the Panthers on Sunday night, the home team, they do win a lot more than the away team does. And yeah, the Eagles, well, they've kind of stunk it up this year. There goes my Super Bowl prediction. But, the Panthers, they do have that old school formula, stout defense and, run the ball down the opponent's throat. It ends up wearing the other team down. And, if the other team does stop the run, Cam Newton has shown the ability this year that he can, he can convert those, he can convert on those 3rd and longs and, use his legs, like he usually does and has in the past to, kind of put the team on his shoulders and win games. And it's especially impressive, too, because he really doesn't have that many targets out there, ever since he lost Steve Smith, everyone thought, he's going to struggle, but apparently that's not the case. So, Cam Newton has been doing great this year.
I think with the Panthers' run game, that opens up so many different options. on the passing game on those, like you said, third and longs, because some teams will be putting more defenders in the box, leaving some of your defenders, especially like with the likes of Ted Ginn and Philly Brown, with the speed, leading them on with man-to-man single coverage to beat their defender down the sidelines to get open for the touchdown.
Yeah, and let's give some credit to Ron Rivera with the Carolina Panthers. Before Ron Rivera became the head coach, they were kind of a bottom feeder team. They had some pretty bad records there, but he's completely turned around this team, and as of now, it does look like they're going to win the NFC South.
All right, let's turn to what is coming up this week. Rhett, I'm going to turn to you first. What is a big game this week?
I think an important game this week is Steelers-Bengals. Andy Dalton has been historically bad against the Steelers, but he has looked extremely good this season, and he's got him 6-0 right now. Roethlisberger is supposed to be back. So that's going to be an interesting matchup out there in the NFC North, and I really think that is going to really determine just how good the Bengals are, and if they really have arrived, or if they're just going to revert to their old Bengal ways and be bad in the playoffs.
All right, Evan, what is a big game for you this week?
Obviously, the game everybody's looking forward to is that undefeated matchup between the Packers and the Broncos. But I think the biggest matchup right now is Dolphins-Patriots, because we don't know who we're going to see out of the Dolphins, what we're going to see out of them, because suddenly the last 2 weeks they've come out as this elite team. But, I mean, granted, they've played really bad teams. And so we're going to see if Dan Campbell can keep it going against a really good Patriots team that isn't perfect, but their offensive line against the Colts, they played better. And against the Colts and the Jets, they played better than people thought they would. There's only a couple examples of obvious communication breakdown on the offensive line. And so the one thing that people thought, all right, maybe this will bring the Patriots down, it hasn't, unfortunately. And so we'll see if the Dolphins can put up a good fight, see if Ryan Tannehill comes out as great or meh.
All right, Nate, what is your key game for the week?
Yeah, a lot of people are going to question this. But just let me explain. I think I'm going to find the Vikings-Bears game interesting because I'm actually going to be at that game. And I'm going to be at Soldier Field, so that's going to be fun to watch. Well, that's not really my game of the week because it's probably going to stink. But anyway,
if you're a Bears fan,
if you're a Bears fan, well,
Tim,
we'll see. The Vikings haven't won in Chicago since 2007. So
that'll change.
That's pretty bad. Anyway, but the Dolphins and Patriots is also my game of the week. Dan Campbell, a quote from him Sunday, I think a reporter asked him about, how well Ryan Tannehill had played or something. Then he's like, and then Dan Campbell said he told the reporter, he's like, oh yeah, I thought that was Dan Marino out there or something. It was great. Dan Campbell, he just seems like that energetic guy that, the Dolphins can rally around, unlike Joe Schmo Philbin. Yeah, I think that the Dolphins are going to give the Patriots some fits Thursday. Especially with the Dolphins defense, starting to fire up too. That'll be a good matchup.
Any game I think involving an undefeated team is a key matchup because it's always another chance for an undefeated team to not be undefeated anymore. And so you always have to pay close attention to those games, even if it is the 3-4 Colts going up against the 6-0 Panthers. Anything could happen on Monday night.
Yeah, that's true, especially because, especially with, Monday and Thursday night games tend to stink, anything can happen. So, that'll be interesting to watch. The Panthers will probably win, but hey, you never know.
You guys took all of my games of the week. I thought the Panthers one was going to slip right past you, and I was going to be able to talk about that one.
You didn't think that at least I was going to talk about Colts-Panthers?
I figured you might have, but I figured I would be the one to talk about that.
Titans-Texans.
So I'm going to...
Well, let me say one thing about Titans-Texans. I really hope the Titans win, because if the Texans win, they will be 3-5, and so will the Colts after this week. And so they will be tied for the lead in the AFC South. So that means the Colts are going to have to win a game. So Titans, I beg you. Zach Mettenberger, I beg you. Beat the Texans, dang it.
Texans can't run the ball now, so you don't have to worry.
Yeah, you're right.
So I'm going to give my game of the week. You guys already took most of my games of the week, so I'm going to go to a lesser matchup. The Seahawks and the Cowboys. Cowboys are 3-4.
2-4.
2-4. And I think if they want to do anything this season, Jerry Jones said they have to stay afloat with Matt Castle or Brandon Whedon, whoever they decide to use.
Okay, there's no difference between Matt Castle and they are the same quarterback.
His hopes are way too high.
You're going to get 3 picks no matter who you plug in at quarterback. So,
but as long as they stay afloat, which they haven't done a good job of all season, they should be all right with Tony Romo and Des Bryant to come back. But the Seahawks at 3-4, I believe, 3-4, they just beat the 49ers, but they haven't been good all season either. I mean, they lost to a bunch of good teams, and that's who they'll be playing a lot later in the season because they finished first, so they have to face all the other first place teams. But other than that, two teams desperately need a win here.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, the Seahawks, they've been struggling, I think, some egos especially have been colliding up there in Seattle, with Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, and, Michael Bennett, they're all a bunch of airheads. And, now that they've got their big contracts too, they're out there they're out there saying me, look at how good I am instead of how good the Seahawks are. So that's a big reason why they've been struggling.
well, I mean, every single week, based on whether the Seahawks win or not, it's either, or the Seahawks, they're down and out this year, they're not going to make the playoffs, or, the Legion of Boom is back, the Seahawks are a top 10 team, they're the best team in the NFL. I think they're kind of somewhere in between. They're going to have a hard time keeping up with the Cardinals, who have been a really good team this year.
Aside from the last 2 weeks.
Well, yeah, you're right.
Well, Monday night they look good, but...
Yeah. But, I mean, the Seahawks, even still, they've shown they have a slightly above average offense and defense, and that's not good enough to keep up in a division where even the Rams are pretty good this year. I mean, the 49ers stink, but other than that, it's a pretty good division. So
we have just a couple more minutes here. Let's go back to everybody's Super Bowl predictions, see where we went right and where we went wrong. Rhett, do you even remember your Super Bowl prediction here?
I think I had the Packers in the Super Bowl.
I think you had Packers-Colts.
I think I had Packers-Colts, and I'm pretty sure I picked the Packers. So that's still a distinct possibility.
Half of it, maybe.
Well,
I don't know about the Colts making the Super Bowl.
they could get hot at the right time. You don't know that.
But
That's true.
Nate, what was your Super Bowl prediction?
Well, once again, Patriots, Eagles. Patriots over Eagles.
I'm not sure how you could have the Eagles in the Super Bowl knowing that they're going to be quarterbacked by Sam Bradford.
Hey, things happen, but...
He's a Heisman winner.
Yeah, but apparently that didn't happen, so on to Evan.
All right, Evan, what was your Super Bowl prediction?
pick the Packers to win the Super Bowl over the Colts. That was a huge mistake, and that's all I'm going to say. Wait, one more thing. Sam Bradford always looks like a scared person. Like, his eyes are huge. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
And my Super Bowl prediction was the Packers and the Patriots, two undefeated teams. So I would say I'm doing pretty well compared to all you fools.
I couldn't bring myself to pick the Patriots because I hate them with all of my heart.
Austin Safarian-Jenkins. We're just going to bring up Austin Safarian-Jenkins. You're not an expert.
He dropped him.
Yeah, because he's hurt.
I mean, I'll probably go pick him up once Antonio Gates. I'll start Antonio Gates and him. But
Whatever. We're about to ramble. Turn this off.
that is the end of the show. Thank you for joining us this week.
Whatever.